It is remarkably easy to construct a highly structured conspiracy theory that links media figures, politicians, and artists into a single criminal cartel. You only need to track their interactions. Take the case of political cartoonist Bob Moran. An expansive, anonymous investigation recently compiled a dossier claiming Moran is a controlled asset deployed by the establishment, rather than a genuine independent dissident. This objective forensic report evaluates those claims, delivering a definitive verdict. Unlikely. The investigation collapses because it lacks three critical elements. The author identifies zero direct evidence, no rational motive, and no confessions. The chain of custody is entirely missing. To build this case, the author zeroes in on highly specific cultural artifacts, most notably the 2022 television series The Devil's Hour, using it as the foundation for an elaborate web of guilt by association. The core analytical failure here is one of application. The author meticulously gathers verifiable public facts, who worked where, who tweeted what, but uses that accurate data to support wildly invalid structural and psychological conclusions. We can deconstruct exactly how this failure happens by running the dossier through two distinct lenses: structural network theory, which looks at how people interact, and psycholinguistic profiling, which evaluates how the author processes reality. Highly intelligent analysts are frequently the most susceptible to a trap called anomaly hunting. By applying a hypervigilant cognitive style to ordinary data, they convert standard professional proximity into an invisible shadow war. This photograph shows the London media and political landscape. It is a highly concentrated, competitive ecosystem, where proximity is a professional requirement, not an anomaly. The dossier maps out the Moran family network to infer a centralized malicious intent. It begins by linking Bob Moran to his brother Tom Moran, a screenwriter, and his sister-in-law Gemma Moran, a public relations manager. This is a portrait of Member of Parliament Esther McVey. The author places immense weight on the fact that Gemma Moran eventually secured a position as McVey's parliamentary private secretary. Because McVey previously worked as a presenter for GB News, a network that heavily promoted Bob Moran in 2022, the author concludes this multi-step connection is proof of a controlled, orchestrated media platforming effort. This is author Malcolm Gladwell. In his work on social epidemics, he popularized the concept of connectors, people who link us up with the world. The dossier commits a textbook error known as hub and connector misattribution. Social psychologist Stanley Milgram established the mathematical reality of networks. In highly competitive public-facing industries, a very small number of hubs naturally bridge massive populations. Media and politics share the same few connectors. This diagram highlights the contrast. The author views the world as a planned network, where every line is drawn with intent. Reality operates as a natural hub network, where individuals cluster messily around a few high-traffic nodes. The dossier points out that both Bob and Tom Moran achieved significant professional success and won awards in their early 20s. Instead of attributing this to merit, extreme effort, or statistical luck, the author uses it as definitive proof of subversion. Proximity does not equal coordination. The author is taking the baseline, mathematically verified architecture of human social networks and pathologizing it. Moving from structural networks to the text itself, a psycholinguistic analysis of the dossier reveals a severe case of intense in-group, out-group fracturing. Muzaffar Sharif's Robber's Cave framework maps how isolated groups develop intense internal solidarity paired with acute hostility toward anyone outside. The author's worldview operates exclusively within this binary. This graphic represents the author's rigid categorization. Individuals are assigned collective nouns like the truth movement, the freedom movement, or dissidents. Everyone else is categorized on the opposing side as a criminal cartel. This creates severe intolerance for ideological variation. The author displays hypervigilance toward any internal group anomalies, aggressively policing the boundaries for anyone who interacts with the outside. When Bob Moran released a cartoon that sparked debate, the author immediately questioned his interactions with both pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian factions, viewing the resulting antagonism as a deliberate plot to polarize dissidents. The author points out that medical professionals publicly endorsed Moran's stage show, even though Moran frequently decried their medical views as idiotic. To the author, this contradictory association is evidence of sophisticated deceit. This cognitive style interprets human interaction as a zero-sum game. It leaves zero room for natural ideological drift, financial opportunism, or standard professional disagreement. By utilizing labels like controlled TV outlet to describe networks like GB News, the author builds a linguistic wall. It automatically invalidates any information or individuals operating outside the highly policed in-group. The text is remarkably devoid of emotion. It features a low emotional density, entirely overridden by a highly structured, analytical, and hypervigilant cognitive profile. For this author, standard diversity of thought does not exist. The mere presence of a social or professional bridge between opposing groups is evaluated as treason. When prominent figures in an ideological movement display contradictory behavior, observers experience what Leon Festinger defined as cognitive dissonance, an unpleasant psychological tension caused by clashing realities. To resolve this jarring discordance, the author rejects simple, mundane explanations. Instead, they construct an airtight, highly systematized explanatory framework reliant entirely on numerical codes and symbols. This diagram illustrates the author's logic. They observe that Moran capitalizes his signature as Bob, claiming it visually resembles the numbers 33 and 101. They pair this with the fact that his artwork was priced at £33,000 and show tickets at £33. The author then folds in the 2022 television series The Devil's Hour, pointing to a specific character who awakens every night at exactly 3:33 a.m. When direct numbers are absent, the author forces them to appear using gematria, an alphanumeric code system, calculating that the initials LC provide the number 33, and then arguing that two L's can also be manipulated to equal 33. Occam's razor demands that the simplest explanation with the fewest assumptions is usually correct. The author bypasses this principle entirely, opting for an incredibly complex, multi-layered conspiracy based on a single recurring number. This is systematized rationalization. The anomaly hunting provides a jarring discordance, and the brain applies a rigid, protective structure to force the pieces to fit together. The author's extreme systemizing drive requires them to completely reject random coincidence as a factor in human behavior. The result is a logically invalid loop. The assumption that the number 33 is a deliberate signal is used to question family connections, which is then used to question career success, which circles back to validate the number 33. When structural evidence fails to materialize, the analyst utilizes numerology to manufacture a feeling of substance. Returning to the forensic investigation report, the assessment table clearly outlines exactly why this highly structured theory collapses under scrutiny. The dossier contains zero direct evidence. There are no financial records, no leaked emails, and no coordination-related communications to back up the central claim. The analysis fails to provide a plausible motive. It never explains why a powerful establishment would orchestrate an elaborate multi-person deception based entirely on leaving easily discoverable numerical signals in public artwork. Finally, it completely lacks a mechanism. The report details the associations between the Moran brothers and their network, but never explains how they are actually controlled, who gives the orders, or what the ultimate objective is. Avoiding these analytical traps requires strict adherence to three rules. First, investigators must require direct evidence of coordination, rather than relying on circumstantial association. Second, counterarguments must be addressed systematically. Analysts should run statistical probabilities on repeating numbers to rule out simple explanations, like market research dictating a £33 ticket price, before jumping to subversion. Third, any complex theory must establish a plausible motive and a clear mechanism for how the conspiracy operates without being compromised. Without these safeguards, an investigation is not actually tracking a criminal cartel. It is assembling a puzzle of the author's own making. Every investigation has a complexity budget. Over-analyzing symbols, pricing, and hand gestures rapidly drains that budget, leading to profound analytical blindness regarding the actual, verifiable facts on the ground. True intelligence analysis is not about drawing lines between every available data point. It requires the discipline to distinguish a significant, actionable pattern from the ordinary noise of a highly connected world.